Let's kick off. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November National Grassroots Conference Call with results. I hope you're all staying safe and well as we go into a further lockdown in England and Wales, and potentially Scotland too. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Aaron Oxley. I'm the Executive Director of Results UK. And if we have anyone new on the call this month, a very warm welcome to you. If you are new, would you like to take a second to introduce yourselves? It's not mandatory, but we always like to give people the chance.
Hi, my name's Harriet. I'm new. I'm just completely new to campaigning, but I found it online when I was looking for volunteering opportunities, so I thought it'd be good to.
It's great to have you with us. Anybody else want to say hello? No worries. Okay, good. Thanks for people who are joining us for the first time. Hopefully you'll get something out of tonight which is interesting and gets you interested in taking some action. So this month's advocacy action comes at a time when we're all obviously very concerned about the continuation of COVID containment measures in the UK and all that they mean for us and our families as infections are increasing rapidly. We head towards the Christmas holiday season. Now, since the very start of the pandemic, Results and other organisations we work with have been clear that if we're to succeed in overcoming this big threat to our health and safety, we must work in cooperation internationally, as well as having strong disease control measures in place in the UK. Not only is this a global pandemic requiring globally coordinated mechanisms to respond effectively to the virus and its health and economic consequences, but its impact will be felt well beyond the immediate infections and death from the disease itself, as terrible as those are. The knock-on effects, or what they're called as secondary impacts of the disease, are expected to be far larger than the deaths from COVID-19 itself. That includes additional deaths from diseases such as tuberculosis, AIDS, and malaria, and, as we'll hear a bit more tonight, from the extra burden of food shortages and increasing malnutrition, as millions of families struggle with the additional hardships caused by the virus on their country's economies and on their household incomes. And of course, let's not forget the huge impact on education, as millions more children around the world are not in school, and many, especially girls and the most marginalized children, are least likely to return to school after they reopen. We do recognize, of course, that as the pandemic puts strains on our own economy, we have to get the balance right between the global and the domestic response. And we have to accept that a shrinking UK economy inevitably means a shrinking aid budget, as the amount we're legally obliged to spend on overseas development assistance, sometimes called ODA, as 0.7% of our gross national income, that's going to be smaller in proportion with a shrinking economy. Now, we don't yet know what this figure will be at the end of the year, but we don't see the predictions that it's going to merit the £2.9 billion of cuts to aid programs, which the government has already announced. Nor have we seen evidence of the thinking on which those cuts were based. This is particularly worrying since the government's own spending review, expected to be announced later this month, hasn't been concluded yet, nor has the integrated review of security, defence, development and foreign policy, which was intended to set long-term priorities for our new FCDO, the department that spends our aid. However, a single year set of spending priorities is now expected towards the end of November. So we're calling on vital investments in human development, including nutrition and education, as well as health, be protected as far as possible. We'll hear more about this in a few minutes. Now, for those that joined us a couple of months ago, some of you will remember that we had a great speaker from the One campaign, Nassim Salad, and she shared their analysis of where the cuts should come in order to protect those vital human development priorities that we all care about. Sadly, we don't think the government entirely shares our views on this, even though we're regularly meeting civil servants and receiving letters saying that nutrition and education are top priorities. Some of you will have received such letters too. Thank you for sharing them with us when you get them, because those are absolutely vital intelligence. We now need to see the sense of concern in those letters reflected in the funding they're prepared to put into action on human development. And this is why your advocacy right now is so important. I'm actually going to put a link to a blog post on the One Campaign website in the chat box, explaining how they see where the cut should fall. We think it's a great analysis, which finds about £1.6 billion of aid spending, which doesn't match the high quality and focus on poverty reduction that we should expect. That's where we think they should be looking for cuts, and not in human development. So that brings me to the topic of how do we as a country ensure that the aid money we give is spent as well as it can be and has the biggest impact on reducing poverty and promoting sustainable development and human well-being. Many of you have joined us in recent months in expressing concern about the new FCDO's priorities, the government's focus away from human development spending and towards the national interest. We don't agree with the government that these are the same thing. That makes it even more important that Parliament should be able to perform its constitutional role in scrutinising the work of government as effectively as possible, particularly when it comes to international development. The International Development Committee, commonly called the IDC, is made up of a cross-party group of interested and well-informed parliamentarians, has historically done this very well indeed, holding inquiries, making recommendations, and representing the interest of the UK public and making sure that this work is done well. The International Development Select Committee, the IDC, was headed up until last year by Stephen Twigg MP. We actually heard from him on this very conference call back in July with his ideas on how to support this work in the future. We've got a link of that conference call in case you need reminding or you weren't here, and we'll drop the link to that into the chat box just now. Today, the IDC is currently chaired by Sarah Champion MP, who some of you are going to meet virtually in just a few days on the 12th of November. So we'll get the chance to hear directly how we at Results can support their vital work. However, we know that since the creation of the FCDO, the government is intending to replace the IDC, which was set up to review the work of the former Department for International Development, or DFID, but not the new department, because that also includes foreign policy and defence. Now, normally, parliamentary committees mirror the remit of the government departments whose work they review, but we believe that the Foreign Affairs Select Committee simply doesn't have the capacity or expertise to include international development in its already very broad remit as well. Even with the very best of intentions, there just aren't enough hours in the day. If you were able to take action over the summer to argue for an effective system of parliamentary scrutiny for international development, thank you. We are told to expect a vote in Parliament in the coming weeks, but we don't yet know exactly what structure the government is proposing. Importantly, though, they've said that they will give MPs a free vote. That means they don't have to vote along party lines. They can vote with their conscience. And that's because this is a matter for the House of Commons and not the government. So it's vital that all MPs of all political parties take part in the debate and vote for an effective parliamentary scrutiny mechanism that performs the role that's currently being performed so very effectively by the IDC. As soon as we know the details of this, we expect to let you know so that you can contact your MP and urge them to vote for that effective parliamentary scrutiny of the government's international development work. Thank you in advance if you're able to do this. We think it's coming quite soon, but apologies that we can't give you much more in the way of advance warning than that. Our intelligence on parliamentary procedure is that the government may not give very much advance warning at all of the vote and the proposals it intends to put forward. So the window to influence it could be very small. So keep your MP's Twitter handle, email address, and phone number close by, because we could have a real impact on this, and it would really set the stage for a proper parliamentary scrutiny of development spending for many years to come. So that's it for me now. I'm going to hand over to Dela for the usual roundup of all your advocacy activities around the UK in the last month. Over to you, Dela.
Thanks, Aaron. So to anyone who's new, thanks for joining. I work on the campaigns team, and hopefully we've been in touch over email already. So yeah, thanks for joining. I will start off by just flagging that we are organising a training for the whole network on Saturday, the 12th of December. Obviously, will be over Zoom. It's just to save the date for now. We'll send you an Eventbrite link and some more details when we've got them. So please bear with us. On a similar topic in terms of training, on the campaign for influencing the vote on the IDC, which Aaron was just talking about, some of our colleagues from other organisations working on aid recently ran a training and have shared the recording with us. So if you're interested in learning more about the IDC, I'll pop the link in the chat. I think it's an hour long, so not too heavy. So in terms of activity from the network this month, I'll just run through and give a little picture of what you've been up to. If I've missed something amazing that you did, just pop it in the chat. I'd love to hear it. So thanks to everyone who took the September and October actions, which were linked and were both about making some noise about what we think the FCDO's priorities should be for the department over the next sort of few years. I know Jay in Macclesfield was busy chasing up his MP, David Rutley, this month because he didn't hear back from the September action. And he managed to get that letter sent off to Dominic Raab from his MP. So thank you for your persistence of chasing that up. On the same letter topic, Jill in Salt Valley actually got a response back from the FCDO. So I will share a link with you so you can read it. Aaron's talked a little bit about what we think the government are thinking at the moment. So I won't go into too much more detail, but we think it's a handy insight into what their priorities might be after the spending review. So do have a read if you haven't received your own response. Some of you have also taken to the media and social media as well in October to try and push for these priorities for the Department on Human Development. I've been hearing from some of you, it's been tough to get MPs to engage with you on social media. So thanks for that honest feedback. We'll definitely bear that in mind for future actions. So thanks for trying. And it's been nice to see some more activity on Twitter and Instagram. I wanted to give a little example. Cameron in Manchester wrote a really great letter to the editor of his local paper. He's not sure if it's been published yet, so he decided to self-publish it, and I'll put a link in the chat. And hopefully that piece of writing will come in handy later on when engaging with your MP or just explaining what issues you're passionate about. And yeah, I wanted to say welcome to any new members from the Manchester group who might be on the call. I know lots of you have recently come through via the online university volunteer site. So best of luck taking your first action. I know a few members have already reached out to Jeff Smith MP, who's a new MP for the group. So thanks for that, that's awesome. I also wanted to give a proper welcome to Lucy in Edinburgh, who's now in full swing in her new role as the Edinburgh group leader. Welcome to you. If you haven't met Lucy, do introduce yourself in the chat or say hello if you like, and welcome her. And yeah, it's been really good to see the Results Edinburgh Twitter back up and running as of October. So thanks for yours and the group's hard work on that. Also, the London group have let me know they've had quite a big influx of lots of new members, being the start of university term. And have started sending sort of introductory letters from new members to welcome yourselves to your MP and kind of tell them what you're all about and try and build that relationship. So thanks for that. Tamara and Stephen have also written a really good blog post using the Sustainable Development Goals anniversary as a nice hook. So I'll link to that in the chat as well. So since we last met in October, there's been a few advocacy meetings that Results have helped organise with FCDO civil servants, and I think we've had around 10 people join per meeting, so that's really exciting. We've had Abigail Perry, who is the nutrition lead for the FCDO, and some of you recently met with the Deputy Directors of Human Development, who share the role at the FCDO. I wanted to ask actually if anyone who's in any of those meetings wanted to share anything about how it went, especially maybe if it was your first time doing that kind of meeting with civil servants. It doesn't have to be your first time, but I just thought it would be nice to hear from someone who has joined them and would like to share what kind of experience it was. If anyone wants to unmute, you can just jump in. can see a few people who I know in the meeting, so even if you weren't new and you want to say something, jump in. No? Okay, maybe you can pop it in the chat if you think of anything. Oh, is someone coming off mute?
Yeah, I was in the one with Jo, the Deputy Director of Human Development, and it was really interesting. And she was quite positive about the merger. She was really upbeat about it, and saw a lot of good things that would come out of it. I was pleasantly surprised by that. You know, I don't know if anybody else had any thoughts on that, but I thought that was really positive.
That's good to hear. Thanks, Jill. Anybody else? No pressure. Maybe pop in the chat if you are too shy to unmute yourselves. So I think I've got two last things just to quickly mention. Results has been doing a fair few activities for Black History Month, which has been happening throughout October. I wanted to share a blog that I put together and thank Amos, Nikki and Keisha, who are all part of that blog, and talked a bit about why they think it's important to amplify the voices of Black campaigners working in international development. So I'll post a link, and just, yeah, big thanks for being part of that. And lastly, I just wanted to share that there's been a bit of a change in the campaigns team at Results. So my role is now the campaigns and communications officer. So we'll be looking for a new campaigns coordinator. So if you know anyone that you think would be suitable and interested, I will share the job description, and maybe you can pass that on to anyone who you think would be good. Yeah, I think that's it from me. I will post all the links I mentioned in the chat just now. Back to you, Aaron.
Thanks, Dela. Unfortunately, I am not sure if our guest has joined us yet. If they are, they may have joined under somebody else's name, but I don't see them on the call. If you are here, Rachel, can you pipe up? If not, I'm going to have to stall for a minute while we try and get her on. Apologies to everybody. Why don't I start introducing her? So if she does jump on, she'll be able to hit the ground running. So fingers crossed, a miracle will occur in the next 30 seconds or so. So folks, this evening, we are coming back to the topic of nutrition, and I'm going to do my best to introduce the topic and hopefully our speaker. Just a reminder that the subject of nutrition is something that many of you on this call have been taking action on for quite a while. Just even looking at earlier this year, I mean, and what a long year it's been, we've actually asked you to contact the government twice already, contacting two different international development secretaries, one in February, and then later again in August. So some of you on this call may well be newer to this issue, and so you may be wondering why we're talking so much about nutrition. Hopefully by the end of this evening, it's going to be clear to you as to why nutrition and why this particular moment. Hopefully in a minute, we're going to be joined by Rachel Hickman from Concern Worldwide. I just want to check, Rachel, have you joined the call while I've been introducing you? Well, no, I don't see her, I'm afraid. Okay.
Aaron, maybe while we're waiting, it would be good to hear more about what the network's been up to, and maybe I could ask anyone on the call who wanted to give a bit more detail about what they've been doing this month to pitch in, because I always like to hear that. I don't know if that sounds good to you.
Please go ahead.
Okay, so I mentioned Cameron's media piece. Cameron, did you maybe want to jump in and tell us how you approached that piece and a bit of the thinking behind it? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so how did I approach that piece? Well, basically, I looked at, I guess, some of the things that had been coming out in the local press recently, and there was a lot around, the number of schools that had had some form of closure because of COVID, and classes having to learn from home. and then use that basically as a link to link kind of the disruption of education within the local area to disruption of education globally. And spoke about, and then used a number of the different resources that Results has shared with us, like the one, I think it's the One campaign, do their development tracker, where you can see how much your local community has contributed towards the 0.7%, and just threw in some examples and some figures from there to really make the case as to, you know, the link between disruption of education locally, but also disruption of education globally. Not heard anything back from my MP yet, but it seems like he sort of isn't really interactive on Twitter anyway. It's just used to kind of, you know, get stuff out there.
Yeah. So
I would definitely, you know, say self-post on Medium or self-publish on Medium, and then yeah, you can always use that as a repository for anything that you make for a blog.
Thank you, Cameron. If you haven't had a chance to look at the piece, definitely do have a look at the link I've just put in the chat. I think the important thing you mentioned is kind of linking that what's happening locally in your constituency or your area with the global issue. And I think you did that really well. So thanks for that example. Does anyone from the London group want to talk about your blog? I'm trying to see if we have Stephen or Tamara. Maybe we don't. No, I can't see either of them. Did maybe the Edinburgh group or anyone from the London group want to say how it's been going this month with new memberships and what you've been working on?
So I can say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, for those who haven't met, I'm Lucy. I'm leading the Edinburgh group. So I've only been doing this a month. We are quite a new group in general, which is challenging in and of itself because we obviously can't meet each other to then everything is digital. So really our focus has been getting the Twitter up and running again, getting the Instagram up and running, and just trying to figure out some basics such as which MPs we have covered. And yeah, we unfortunately didn't get a response from the MPs in terms of tweets, but there was quite a lot of general interaction with the tweets, so that was good in terms of raising awareness. And yeah, we're looking to reach out to the MPs who we've not had contact with yet and arrange initial meetings.
Cool, that sounds really good. Thanks for giving that overview. Yeah, it's good that you're setting up the Twitter ready to go for maybe different kinds of interaction with your MP later on. So yeah, thanks for doing that. Does anyone else want to jump in and tell us about something? I'm sure there's been more happening than I've mentioned.
I can. Dela,
yeah,
can you hear me?
Is that Richard?
Yeah. Hi everyone. Yeah, I can certainly give a bit of an update from the London group. Had actually a really great month with Stephen and Tamara rekindling the London blog page, which is a great, really interesting blog, which I'll put in the chat if it's not already there. Huge thanks to Amos and Keisha. I think I can see Keisha on the call. She might want to have a quick talk about the work she was doing with yourself, Dela, for Black History Month, but also she's been pivotal in helping us set up a more sociable system within the group during lockdown, sort of trying to get some of the new members to meet some of the more experienced ones away from our monthly group meetings, which has been really great. I've heard some positive things back about that, which has been really nice to hear. And then the only final thing which we've been working on, I mean, we've had quite a lot of new members recently, sort of in the sort of 15 to 20 range, which has been phenomenal. So just trying to get a few of those new members to start picking up and building relations with the local MP. So we've had a few, well, we've had a volunteer get back to me today with her introductory letter to Oliver Dowden finished, which I thought was actually probably one of the best letters I've read for a while. And I've asked for her permission to share it with the wider group. And she shared it with the London group already, but once she could give me that permission, I'll probably share it with the wider network as well. Because I thought it was a fantastic letter, which has been really great to hear. So yeah, Keisha, do you want to do you talk about the buddy system and obviously the stuff for Black History Month as well, if you want?
Yeah, so just briefly, I guess we have been up to a lot this month, now that I think about it properly. So yeah, with the London group, we have set up a new buddy system because we've had a phenomenal amount of new volunteers join us over the past couple of months. And yeah, so we've set up a system where we've essentially started messaging people. I've made a WhatsApp group chat, and we've just become a lot more active in the London group on a day-to-day basis. And also, yeah, it was really, really good, like an amazing idea, Dela, to do the Making History Now project. So it just shone a light on loads of Black advocates, and, you know, essentially just helped us to really amplify what we are doing in terms of international development. But it wasn't just people from Results who featured, but people from our partner organizations. So guys, do feel free to give it a read. Yeah, there's been no interaction from our MP, unfortunately, but still good.
Thanks, Keisha. Yeah, good to hear that that buddy system seems to be helping, because it's a lot of work for one group leader to kind of feel that they are able to have a one-on-one chat with every single new member if you're having a big influx during freshers. So yeah, thanks for that. So Aaron, I think I'm ready to hand back over to you now. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Naveed, sorry, my internet just dropped. Hopefully I'm back now and you can hear me. I think we're still sans guest, am I right?
I'm afraid we are. I don't know what we can do about that.
Shall we kick into the questions anyway and see how far we can get?
Yeah, let's go for that. So basically our speaker, she may still turn up, but she is a member of what's called the ICANN group, which is the International Campaign for Action on Nutrition. And it's got a UK group called ICANN UK. And she sits alongside people from a number of organisations, including Results UK, to basically coordinate nutrition campaigning and advocacy. So we've worked with her to brief her to sort of answer some questions that will be relevant to our network. And so what Aaron and I have decided to do in the background whilst you were speaking is have a stab at answering the questions as best we can ourselves. And if any of the questions you have are kind of too detailed or involve sort of a bit more expert knowledge than we have, we'll park those and get back to you with some more detailed answers from someone who's a bit closer to the action. But obviously, because as you were hearing earlier on, you know, we are coming up for a time when you know, there's not much time left now before the end of the year when the money runs out. So we're kind of keeping a bit on top of this one. So we'll go ahead with the questions and risk you having perhaps slightly less detail than we would like to give you normally each month. So apologies for that.
So in which case, shall we go straight over to Oxford for our first question?
Yes, hello. So the question that I had was, we've campaigned regularly on the Nutrition for Growth agenda for a long time now, as you've mentioned earlier. So what is special about this particular moment?
Right. So how do you want to do this, Naveed? Shall I have a stab and you follow up?
You go first.
Okay, he's given me the easy job. So in terms of this particular moment, there are a few things that make right now really important. One of them Naveed mentioned in passing, which is I think the most critical of all, which is that the money runs out at the end of the year. For those of you that have been campaigning with us for a really long time or campaigning on international development, will remember the 2013 IF campaign. You may have been campaigning with other organizations as well as that time. But at that moment, there was also some big commitments from the UK and from a number of other countries all around the world under the umbrella of an initiative called Nutrition for Growth, or N4G. At that conference, which was held in London and chaired by David Cameron, we collectively pledged well over $4 billion from donor countries to fight malnutrition. And the UK was one of the biggest and most leading donors at that conference. We made very, very large multi-year pledges worth hundreds of millions of pounds. And the reason why we were able to pledge so big was because the government of the day gave itself quite a long time frame to spend that money out. They made 7-year pledges with big, long trajectories. That's really good. That's what you want in nutrition, because changing, permanently changing somebody's nutritional status is a lot more than just one good hot meal. It's about, really sustained investment in good nutrition for people, and building systems to and changes in behavior, and changes in support, and changes in provision, to make sure that people can get better nourished and stay better nourished for long periods of time. The challenge is that all those commitments expire in 2020. So by the time we get to Christmas, all of those really good pledges that the UK government has been meeting very faithfully over the last 7 years will expire. Now, in the summer just gone, we were supposed to have the Japanese Olympics. And at the Japanese Olympics, the Japanese government had already committed to doing a follow-up event on nutrition for growth, to follow up from the event held just after the London Olympics and carry on that tradition. Unfortunately, because of COVID, all of that's got cancelled, and it's all been thrown up in the air about exactly when all the various pieces are going to happen. So the pledging moment that we were looking to have this summer is now not happening. And so now is really why we need to make sure that nutrition gets back on the agenda, so that we can get some pledges out of the government before they all expire, and that the government knows that they need to renew their commitment to nutrition for 2021 and beyond. Naveed, do you have any additional nuance to add to that?
Probably not. I think that's a pretty good summary. Thank you.
That means we're ready for question 2 from Birmingham.
Has Aaron frozen?
It looks like he has.
Yeah.
He has. I thought he was deep in thought for a second. No, you're right.
Yes. Shall I ask the question or wait for Aaron to unplug himself?
Go for it, Kerry.
Right. Okay, everybody. Right. Welcome all. Question number 2, pre-prepared. We hear there is a government spending review coming. Does this mean more cuts are coming? And is it unrealistic to expect the government to sign up to multi-year financial commitments to international development programs?
So there's several parts of the answer to that question, and it kind of follows on from what Aaron was just saying. So yes, there's a government spending review coming. Now, traditionally, so I would suppose roughly, or talking about roughly over the last decade, they've been 3-year spending reviews, so that government departments have a kind of rough idea of what they're going to have to spend over a decent period of time. So that kind of helps them to plan. We were expecting that to happen this year. Ever since the election, they've been saying they were going to do that. And then they also had this thing called the integrated review, which Aaron mentioned, which was specifically in the areas of foreign policy and development to work out, what did they want to spend their money on. So these 2 things were going to come together in November. Obviously, COVID has made all of their thinking internally in government very up in the air. They probably don't have a complete idea of where the economy is going to land. I see Dela's just posted the details from the background to you. So what I'm saying is in there if you don't kind of catch it all off the bat straight away. So because of this uncertainty, and because of the cuts that they're sort of pretty much, as far as we can tell, making on the hoof, they've decided to have just a 1-year spending review this year. So what that means is you've probably seen in relation to some domestic spending like the NHS, they have said that they will ring fence existing commitments. And we're also really pleased that they've ring fenced some of the multi-year commitments they've already made, particularly Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, and the Global Fund. Now, we still need to check that they're going to be spending the money according to the schedule that they've already agreed to. So there's lots of detail that we need to keep an eye on. But essentially, there are some international development programs that are protected. But we have heard of that, as Aaron said earlier, £2.9 billion of cuts, which is, none of us have seen the numbers. So the reading between the lines, so this is where it gets very kind of, you make your own political, choices about how you read the runes and the politics, really. Yes, it's almost implicit in the government's statement that there will be things that they won't make multi-year financial commitments for. We think nutrition and frankly education should be amongst the things that they do, but they haven't announced that yet. So you could either be positive about it and say, well, they could still do so because the civil servants have been making very positive noises about these things, or you could read between the lines of the Foreign Secretary's statement, or I think it was actually the Chancellor's statement this week. And if it's not on the list, then you might fear it's not going to be protected. So we've got that kind of different messages coming out from different bits of government. And I think this is a great moment to really sort of push, because, this is really the moment where if ever we needed to make them know that there's political, that there's public pressure on them and that people's eyes are on them and they want those commitments that they made in their sort of letters that they sent to you, that we want them to be made a reality, then now's the time. And it may be, that they might make a one-year commitment rather than a multi-year commitment. But what's really critical is that we can't have a cliff edge. We can't have that gap. So it's not really a straightforward answer to the question, Carrie. I think it depends how you read the runes, and we just need to pressurise. But yes, there's a strong chance that there's a load of things that we would like to see long-term commitments for that we're just going to get short-term commitments for, but we genuinely don't know.
Thank you very much, Naveed.
Apologies, folks. My internet seems to be up and down after running perfectly all day. So I think I missed most of the second question, but does that mean we're going to question 3, Naveed?
Yeah, I think so.
Great. So that's from Sheffield.
Hi, everyone. So the third question is, the government recently announced more money for tackling coronavirus and famine relief. Is this a part of what we are asking for?
So I'll probably start off, and Aaron, if you want to pitch in. The answer is kind of no. I mean, it is money that we want. They have put money into a number of different ways of tackling coronavirus. There's a whole load of new global architecture that's coming into being, which the British government have put some support into. I can't remember. I'm sure Aaron probably got the figures to hand. I don't, but multi-million-pound commitments. And then more recently also to famine relief. Now that's all obviously very welcome, but here I would draw the distinction between food security and famine and long-term nutrition. So obviously a lot of the people on this call understand that difference. If they count that money towards nutrition commitments, it might or might not be helpful. So some of you might remember that there's a distinction between two kinds of nutrition programming. There is nutrition specific programming, which could be stuff like clinics that do interventions, measuring children's weights regularly, food fortification, that kind of stuff. And that could be within the context of a famine relief program, in which case it would be part of nutrition programming. But if the famine relief funds are going towards just simply keeping people alive, which obviously is a good thing, but giving them sort of bulk staple foods, then that's obviously necessary, but it wouldn't count towards that nutrition specific spending. There's also other kinds of spending that happen in famine situations and in general development situations, which is called nutrition sensitive programming. This could be, for example, like a water and sanitation program, where obviously good clean water supply and sanitation is absolutely critical for you to be able to take in food and benefit from that properly without getting ill. Again, if that is part of a famine relief program, then it would count to the sort of overall sum that we're talking about. So it's not kind of straightforward that it would count. And again, it's one of those things where when you get into the weeds of it, the experts who follow this, our policy expert Mathilde, for example, who unfortunately couldn't be on this call tonight, would be doing exactly that. She'll be looking at the details of what actually is in that commitment, or over time, what will that money be spent on? And then did it count towards nutrition programs, or was it merely, emergency programming? The coronavirus money, again, whilst it's welcome, I suspect would not count towards that. But so we're asking for additional money. And just to give you a rough idea of the sums, we're asking for around about £120 million a year in nutrition sensitive spending. And that leaves somewhere in the region of 600 to 700 million a year in nutrition sensitive spending. So a much wider range of different programs that also count towards its nutrition targets. Now that, because it's a big sum, is definitely at risk. I mean, all of it is at risk, frankly, of not hitting the target if we don't really get them to prioritise nutrition spending now. Sorry, again, a complicated answer to what sounded like a simple question.
Yeah. So maybe to help flesh that out a little bit, I mean, I think we've got some initial analyses of what planned government expenditure is in 2021 and 2022, looking at different sectors as part of the deferred budget, looking at how we think, based on the best evidence we have, the 2.9 billion in cuts is going to fall. And that preliminary analysis was actually carried out, I believe, by Save the Children UK, and it makes for some pretty sobering reading. It does look like, you know, sort of 10.6 billion pounds being spent through deferred, going down to as little as 7.6. So some quite dramatic drops. Now these are things where, you know, this analysis is based on publicly available data available from the DevTracker website. And so it's not a sort of an absolutely precise response from government to the question, where will you spend your money? It's just the current best publicly shared information they have. So we need to be a little careful that the government doesn't have plans that are not yet reflected in this spending. But some of the stuff in there is makes for quite dramatic reading. Big cuts coming on things that we quite like, you know, health and education with reduced allocations, 38 and 22% respectively. Nutrition also not looking particularly strong as part of these, this analysis. In the short term, even within health, there's, you know, the longer term we're looking at a cut in health. Short term there's a slight increase in health. But again, most of that's COVID related, and it takes away from other priorities that we think are quite important. So we certainly don't have any signs at this stage that nutrition is going to remain prioritised and is going to be able to maintain the current expenditure levels. And so I think that's really at the heart of this, is that we're not actually looking for massive uplifts in nutrition and expenditure in any absolute terms. What we're looking for is for them to maintain at broadly the same levels that they're currently spending. Now, in light of an overall declining aid budget, that's actually quite a big ask. And this brings me to something which I think is important for us all to understand, is that when we're in a global recession where things are getting tough all over for everyone, and particularly given what looks like some pretty severe cuts to our overseas aid budget, even staying at the same level is a big win. And would be a huge win. It's, you know, we often talk about how if you've done some campaigning on us for the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, TB and malaria, for example, you know, we managed to get the £1.2 billion pledge to the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, TB and malaria up to 1.4 billion over a 3-year period, an increase of £200 million. We're not really asking for that on nutrition. We're asking just to hold it steady, because we're aware of the environment that we're operating in, and that times are getting tough for all sorts of expenditure, and tough decisions need to be made. And, you know, we think prioritising nutrition in a time of cuts is a really, really important and vital way to spend the money. I think I'll pause there and we'll open it up for some questions from the floor. So the way to do them, we're slightly out of sorts this evening. We normally announce this ahead of time. You can certainly put any questions into the chat box. Go ahead and do that. We can unmute yourself, I should say. Yell questions out as well. And if you'd rather WhatsApp a question through or text a question through, it is 0777 56 111 78 is the number. 0777 56 78. 11178. Sorry. So does anybody have a question on this? Anything that Naveed and I have said, or anything about the action materials? We'll do our best to answer, give you some more details.
We've got a couple in the chat. Maybe Mark, do you want to read out your question that you've just put in the chat on celebs?
Yes, certainly, Dela. Yes, I was there on that lovely day in June 2013. I just wondered whether results and other NGOs had gone back to some of the celebs on the day, which gave speeches of support for the IF campaign, and just also was it on the back of that, considering his prominence in the news at the moment regarding nutrition on a national level, whether Marcus Rashford would be a person to sort of contact as well.
Thanks, Mark. I'm probably not the best person to answer this. I was also there in Hyde Park in 2013, and I have to say I kind of didn't recognize any of them. So that's not a good start. But seriously though, we work in that coalition I mentioned, ICANN, and some of the other organizations are probably a lot better placed to work with celebrities. It's not something that we've got a track record on. The two organizations that spring to mind who probably have got some relationships with them, and maybe I'm thinking some celebrity chefs as well, that would be ACF, Action Contra La Faim, so Action Against Hunger, and Save the Children are also a very active part of that coalition, alongside Concern Worldwide, who we'd hope for a speaker from today. So definitely the ICANN group will be looking at media and celebrity plans alongside the kind of advocacy that we as Results do. So it's all part of the same mix. But I'm afraid I honestly couldn't tell you exactly who they have been in touch with at this stage. Aaron, you may have your ear closer to the ground on that than I do.
No, I'm afraid I don't, Naveed. One thing I will say though is on Marcus Rashford specifically, and we have actually had a bit of a chat in the office about how we could get hold of his phone number. Unfortunately, nobody has him on speed dial. He's a very, very busy man and is doing great work on hunger in the UK. I'm not sure. I think quite a few people would be keen to talk to him about hunger more broadly, but given he's probably pretty busy and is doing great work already, I'm not sure I'd want to hold my breath on that. We should. I personally will just keep applauding his really, really great work there. Shall we jump to another question from the chat? Let's see, Harriet. Harriet, do you want to read your question out, or would you like me to?
Go ahead, Aaron, you read it. I've forgotten what I asked.
Okay, thanks, Harriet. So Harriet asks, she's wondering about the effect of the disappearance of tourist dollars on resource-poor countries that rely heavily on tourism, leading to malnutrition. Yeah, I think that's a really big concern, but I think it's not just tourist dollars. I think tourist dollars are quite a big thing. And quite a lot of economies do take in quite a lot of money from tourism, and actually quite often there are certain people in communities that really do rely on that. I think the challenge here is that it's also a much broader question. I don't of the whole of the economy as a whole, and this is something where I unfortunately don't have a figure to hand. But it's a fairly clear relationship between the state of the global economy and levels of hunger and malnutrition. Up until the COVID crisis, the single biggest drop in nutritional status around the world was actually triggered by the 2008 financial crash. So the hit to the global economy at that point had a pretty immediate impact on global hunger and nutrition. And I think, again, we need to be careful to differentiate between out and out hunger or famine and longer term nutritional status. Now they're very similar and they're absolutely related, but they're not exactly the same. They're both bad, right? We want it in both. Don't get me wrong. One is not somehow better or worse than the other. But it's the nutritional piece, which is the bit that's always left behind when you look at the government, emergency humanitarian response. Everybody is usually quite keen to make sure that calories are getting to people in an emergency situation, but it is the nutritional part that is often left out and left off. which I think brings me also to a little bit about, brings me back to the cuts question too. I mean, Naveed talked about the pledge that we had, that we wanted from the government being in two parts: the nutrition specific part, which is a smaller value in terms of money, and the nutrition sensitive part, which is a larger amount by value. Now, for those that have been working with us for a while, you probably remember the difference, but just to be, maybe to spell this out for folks that haven't, nutrition specific are things that very directly affect nutritional status. So it could be working with exclusive breastfeeding for the first year, or providing highly nutritious food. Oh, sorry, Naveed is telling me he's already explained this stuff. Apologies. So the key thing mentioning here, though, is that it's the nutrition sensitive stuff that we actually fear quite a lot for in an element of cuts. Because when you're being forced to cut all over the place, saying, well, you know what, this project that had a nutrition component to it, well, we just can't do that bit anymore because it's just not quite enough. So what would have been a project that did something and also help nutrition now just does something, and that opportunity to impact nutritional status alongside of it is unable to be taken. So apologies for explaining something Naveed had already done. Let's jump back and grab another question.
There's a good question from Shane. I don't know if you want to read it out, Shane.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much. So I wondered which countries were benefiting from UK aid delivery in terms of nutrition, and what steps were being taken to make sure that the nutritional aid was kind of being made sustainable, and it wasn't sort of just like deliveries of food, for example, and instead we were kind of investing in the food infrastructure in the countries that needed it. Thank you.
I can start on this one if you like, because I put together an example for the background sheet for this month's action materials, actually, on a project that's being run in Uganda in the Karamoja district, which is quite a nice example of how you can integrate nutrition into health systems. So by doing things like developing the skills of nutritionists and health workers, arranging home visits from health workers, offering education to families and communities on hygiene and how to grow their own vegetables and that kind of thing, as well as making sure that malnourished children are referred to health centres. So I'll put a link to that case study. And also, I think Aaron mentioned DevTracker earlier. DevTracker is a really good way of basically seeing examples of what kind of aid programs are being ran or have been ran in the past. So you can quite easily just search nutrition and you'll see what countries the government has been working in. So there's places like South Sudan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Pakistan, Nigeria. So yeah, you can just literally browse and have a look through what kind of nutrition programs are active. So I can pop a link into both of those things. Don't know if Naveed or Aaron has more to say on that.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I mean, Shane, that's a really, really great question. So DFID works in I think 20 odd countries, most of them in sub-Saharan Africa. And with this kind of programming, it's what's called bilateral aid. I don't know if you come across that term, so direct government to government aid, rather than some of the big multilateral funds that work in other areas. And what that means is that each individual country program, you have to check to see if it's sustainable or not. We were quite heartened when we met Abigail Perry, the sort of lead civil servant on this the other week, who was saying to us, look, please try and help people understand that what this is about is kind of, it is about long-term sustainable nutrition. It's not just about short-term, emergency aid. And it's also about what they call a multi-sectoral approach. So if they're not also addressing things like sustainable economies, and if they're not also addressing climate change that's affecting loads of rural small-scale farmers, for example, then you're really on an uphill struggle in terms of all the other things that you are doing. So the experts in the department are really keen to answer your question and say we really want that to happen, but they're really up against it in terms of public understanding and even political level understanding. So the answer to your last bit of your question, how can we make it sustainable and keep it renewable? The answer is really we keep trying to educate people about that. So there's not a lot of that about that in our action materials this month, but I think it's something that we can, there is that case study that Dela mentioned. But yeah, that whole thing about letting people know what what nutrition is about is really important. On the subject of public understanding, we worked with, so this ICANN group I mentioned, we commissioned some research just over the summer. It was something we'd not done before, actually. We worked with a polling company. We were surprised that it was surprisingly affordable. And we asked the public some questions, and we did a proper sort of panel with all the experts sort of working out how you answer the questions properly. And we did some public polling on what people understand and what they think money should be spent on. And we were really pleased that there was quite a good number of people who did understand that this is about the long term, and that it is about that government money should be spent on nutrition. And what we're hopefully doing is going to be using some of that data. I see that that's just gone into the chat box. That is now kind of public. And so if any of you are going to write a letter to your MP this month, flick in there and have a look. We've sent, there's some headlines as well as the full data. If there's any sort of statistic that you think, oh, I could really use that explains why this is important, then please do. But yeah, brilliant question.
Yeah, one other thing to add. One of the organizations that we do a bit of work with on nutrition is called Nutrition International. They're actually based out of Canada, and they're one of the world's biggest and we think most effective actors working on nutrition. They are actually doing quite a lot of work in Pakistan, funded by UK aid, to do with both food fortification work and providing some technical assistance to the government of Pakistan on a number of different things related to nutrition. So if you're interested in looking a little bit at how Nutrition International's work funded by DFID is impacting in the country of Pakistan, I'm going to put a link to that in the chat box just now as well. That's just data from just last year. So do take a look at that if that country appeals to you, or if we think it will appeal to your MP. It's one where we're having quite a really important impact with our aid contributions. We only have just a couple of minutes left. Naveed, what do you think we should do with them?
I just wanted to flag Jill's question. She's flagged that she's got a really positive letter back from the nutrition experts in the department and asking, is it the politicians we need to influence and get on board? The answer is absolutely yes. It's that sort of gap really between the people knowing what they should do and the politicians putting on the pressure to actually do that. So yes is the answer to that, Jill.
And maybe just a couple of closing remarks about the International Development Select Committee free vote coming up in Parliament. Somebody asked for was it Richard?
Yeah.
May have been when I dropped off, so apologies I didn't see that or sort of hear it. I mean, we think that the government is relatively amenable to having a new committee made which doesn't have a one-to-one relationship with government departments. There is precedent for it. It has happened before. And we do think that Parliament in general will be very supportive of being able to take back control. So I don't know, borrow a phrase from somewhere, and keep its scrutiny of government high. This is one of those things where even with a smaller economy and a shrunk aid budget, it's still a vast amount of money, and ensuring that it's being spent very well. I think a lot of people recognise, and by that I mean parliamentarians recognise, that the current select committee that works for the FCDO, in other words, just the Foreign Office's old one, there's just not enough hours in the day for it to be able to properly scrutinise all that money. And frankly, I think quite a lot of parliamentarians would prefer that the FCDO scrutiny focused on the diplomatic rather than on the aid budget, which is great because that then makes it even more likely that they'd be willing to vote for a separate body that is specialised in scrutinising aid. And I think that is what we would all like, I think. So I think it's definitely a vote that we can win. It's a vote that any parliamentarian can vote any way they want on. They won't be whipped to vote one way or the other. There won't be a party line division or anything like that. So it really is their conscience. And what we've heard from our allies in the sector is that a lot of parliamentarians, they don't actually care that much about aid, actually. Some care passionately about it, but some of them don't care that much about it. But what they do care about is the Parliament being the boss, and the Parliament having the scrutiny, and the Parliament having the control, and the Parliament having the vision to hold the government to account. And they care about that very much. So think about your MP or MPs of, that you can reach. Maybe they don't care that much about aid, but I bet they will be a bit interested in having good parliamentary scrutiny. In terms of the date, it could come pretty much any time from now, which is why we're briefing you. Once they're back from recess, it could be called at any moment. It will be at the whim of the government and their parliamentary schedule. They will try and squeeze it in where they can squeeze it in, we believe. And unfortunately, we will just have to. This is why keep an eye on your email and your fingers on the buttons, because we will need to move really quickly when it does come down the pipe at us, and we may get very, very, very short notice. So just apologies, but that's how the sausage is made. Should we contact our MPs now? Jill asked, should we contact our MPs now on this? If you have the kind of relationship with your MP where you can chat with them repeatedly, then by all means, let them know this is likely coming up. But if you only have the kind of relationship with your MP where you're going to get one shot at briefing them on this, then wait until we've got the details on exactly what the bill is and exactly what the dates are. That will be more impactful and more powerful, because you'll be able to point them directly at it. So yeah, probably wait unless you're really chummy with your MP and are talking to them a lot. I do think, though, with that question, we are out of time. We're actually 1 minute over. We do apologise that we had the double failure of both our guest, unfortunately, not being able to make it, and neither of our nutrition experts from the office able to join the call this evening. We're really sorry about that, but sometimes that's the way it goes. We hope that Naveed and I, and Dela, I should say, have all been able to give you guys some decent answers to the questions and get you fired up to take the action this month. Maybe more than ever, if you think of anything that you want to know that we weren't able to give you a great answer on, please do just let us know, and we will absolutely write back to you with those details and make sure that you have what you do need to know. So don't be a stranger about that. Email Naveed, Dela, myself, anybody. We'll make sure that your questions and concerns get answered, and you get the help you need to have a really impactful action this month. In terms of final wrap up, just a reminder that we are going to have our next grassroots conference call. It will be the last of the year. It's on the first Tuesday of the month, as always, except for January. It's going to be Tuesday, the 1st of December. That also happens to be World AIDS Day. So we're looking forward to speaking to you then. I really hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you so much for joining us this evening and for bearing with us. Hope you've had a good call. Talk to you soon. Good night.
Thanks very